Hello, hello, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a absolutely brilliant guest today who you're all going to recognize from being all over social media in a bright pink hoodie. You literally can't get away from him if you follow him. Does some absolutely fantastic stuff with his business. So, without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Mr. Ian Macbeth. Ian, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to being on the other side of the mic.
Absolutely. It's like payback time for all those people you've had on your podcast and given a hard
Yeah.
time. I'm only joking. I'll be a kind host, I promise. So lots of people recognize you from socials. You do a lot. You've got a podcast yourself. You're on social media all the time, YouTube, author, loads of stuff. So talk us through your sort of journey to get to today. What's your sort of estate agency back history before you did Avocado?
Yeah, so rolling back the years, couple of decades, shall we say, I left sixth form and while I was at sixth form as a part-time PT, so like a fitness instructor, um, did the classic kind of male thing, copied my dad into the gyms and sort of saw my dad as like my hero. So I sort of followed him into the gyms. Um, that becomes quite relevant in my career as an estate agent, actually, because of how, as a fitness instructor, you're taught to educate someone on machinery and how you're almost qualified to allow someone to use gym equipment with you and the process that you go through with that. I think kind of is what led me to become quite a good um, support mechanism for junior estate agents as I became a senior negotiator and assistant manager, manager, director, etc. So yeah, I went into gyms. I did that for about 18 months, part-time for 6 months prior. And then I just realized the money wasn't great and I was in early, then it was quiet. I was in at lunch, then it was quiet. I was in late, then it was quiet. I earned rubbish money. And someone I went to school with actually started as an estate agent and just said, why don't you come and do this? And I was like, well, I hadn't really thought about that. The classic journey for most estate agents. And that was kind of where I then had an interview, got the job, started as a trainee at 19, in the little village where I kind of grew up with my mum. So just round the corner from my family house. And yeah, that was the rest was history after that. I fell in love with it straight away. I remember kind of doing a deal on the first house and the office was shut, but I was so excited. I rushed back to the office to see if anyone was there. It was like my first month. So I've got an offer. I don't know what to do with it. No one was there. I was trying to ring everyone on the phone. They're like, we'll just deal with it tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. But I was so excited from receiving that first offer. And I very quickly kind of climbed the ladder at the same company. I'd always worked at the same company, I did 16 years there. Climbed the ladder to kind of senior negotiator, went to a bigger office, became a branch manager. I think it was actually the youngest branch manager to run the flagship office, which turned out after I kind of took it over, we ended up doing £1 million out of that office 5 years in a row. So it was a big proper office, kind of 13, 14 staff. Um, and then I moved into becoming an area manager and a director, and in the end, I was sort of MD for sales and marketing. So that was kind of my career in agency. I didn't chop around and change. It was kind of started in 2003 where, we had an unbelievable couple of years. Then I saw the crash, and I saw everything change. I learned a lot as a young manager. I learned a lot there. As one of the two sort of marketing leading agents in that town, I really got a pasting that year by a very experienced manager in another estate agency. Kind of really learnt the hard way that year, which was very good grounding for me. Um, I won all the awards. I loved it. I was a young guy in my 20s, kind of earning good money, driving a nice car, wearing a suit, and I just sort of, it felt like home, really. So that's kind of how the early days of me as an estate agent started 21 years ago.
And why do you think you stayed at the company for such a long period of time? Also, there's a huge progression from sort of day one and getting your first offer through to sort of, being the MD of sales sort of thing. What made you stay with that company? Because normally people stay at a company, they go, right, I'm being a negotiator at this company, and they get offered senior negotiator somewhere else, and they get offered a valuer somewhere else. So what was sort of special or keeping you effectively? Because it was Prospect Estate Agency, wasn't it? So what
Yeah.
made you stay at Prospect for such a long period of time?
Yeah. I actually left at one point, strangely. I did get exactly what you just said there. I got frustrated with the manager at the time. Um, I felt like I was, because we were on office commission, I felt like I was doing more for the office than what presented in my OTE at the time. And that was frustrating. And I didn't feel it was my fault. I felt it was the manager's fault. So I got to the point where I did look elsewhere, and did get a job offer from one of the competitors and did hand my notice in. And I kind of left. I told the manager and I left. And I remember it really vividly. I went home living with my mum at the time and just didn't feel right. I kind of was like, not sure if I made the right decision here. And then the owner of the business actually came and knocked on my mum's door and said, Ian, we're going to the pub. This is not happening. And just took me in his car. And even in the journey to the car, into the pub, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm not leaving. And kind of then we had the conversation and things changed and they actually moved the manager. And that was the start of me turning into a more senior figure within the business and ended up becoming the manager not long after that. And I stayed there probably because I enjoyed what I was doing. I'm a competitive person, I always have been. I'm competitive myself. First and foremost, I'm competitive with others, and it gave me that opportunity. And I think until I had my daughter 8 years ago, it suited what I was about. I was probably a bit of an arsehole to some people, as an estate agent that was competitive was. I was good at sales. I was good at talking to people. I was good at training people. Um, I was organized. I was very methodical and analytical in how I did things. And it just suited me. It was a very aggressive company, and it just gave me the platform to kind of put those skills to the test. And really the big change in everything was having my first daughter. That was the moment where my outlook on life in general and how people became people rather than numbers on a whiteboard at that moment. And that's when things became very different. My moral compass shift at that point, and it was very different. And then it was a battle of, I want to make a difference in the business. I want it to be better for the agents. I want it to be better for the clients. And it was a battle of what I believed as a director on the board, what the owners believed, and we were in conflict. And the inevitable was going to happen at that point. They wouldn't let me buy into the company, or they wouldn't give me shares, so it wasn't mine. I was then looking at side hustles and things like that. I was just a bit disillusioned with the whole process, and I started to fall out of love with agency a little bit at that point. Um, and that's why I stayed there as long as I did. But it was also the inevitable of why 16 years later, from being a trainee to an MD, I ended up not being there basically.
And how long did it take you from having sort of the first thought of I might do my own thing, and obviously with that went on to becoming Avocado, but I'm sure it wasn't called Avocado back then. But having the mindset of going, I will actually launch my own estate agency, brokerage, brand, whatever it may be. What was the time difference between you having that first thought and sort of walking out the front door effectively of that business you'd been at for the last 16 years?
Yeah, it's probably about 2.5 years, I would say. Um, when Grace was born, that was when I started to think about different things. Priorities started to change. I wanted to be around, not being the first in the office. I wanted to be around. I wanted to be around the family more rather than in work, doing the figures and, being the kind of the golden boy. That wasn't the priority anymore. And I actually started running around that time as well and listening to podcasts and just started to open my eyes to a slightly different world from this bubble that I'd been in for that period of time. And it wasn't really about me thinking about a new estate agency. It was me thinking about how I could change that estate agency. And did I need to do something on the side, be it property development, be it a side hustle business, something like that? I was more thinking that way. And then a meeting happened, where I'd sat in a room with the other MD for lettings, HR, and the owner. And I thought we were going in to talk about, right, what's going to happen here with staff and things like this. It's a difficult year. And I quickly realized in that meeting, actually, what was happening here was something very different. It was a meeting that I'd normally been on the other side of the desk and experienced. And we were about to go down a really nasty route of, one of us is not going to be here in a couple of months' time. They're taking one of the two big hitters out of the equation. And from the sort of the way the meeting went, I quickly realized that I'd been earmarked as the one that was going to be pushed out. And legally, I won't go into like loads of details because it ended up with a settlement agreement and things like that. But effectively, I was being made redundant, and it was interesting because that was for me, it was a bit of a heartbreaking moment, to be honest with you. In that meeting, I was, quite sad about the whole situation for about 24 hours. Then I was quite frustrated and angry about it for another 24 hours. Um, and then after another 24 hours, I was kind of like, okay, well, you got to do something now. You got to change the plan. You got to kind of take responsibility yourself and do something. And that's where the whole idea of starting my own agency kind of came from a Friday meeting to a Monday morning. Avocado wasn't a thing at the time, but the idea of being my own boss and taking back control of my career was ultimately what I'd gone for over that weekend, really.
And what gap in the market did you see for what is now become Avocado to kind of slot into? What do you think other agencies were missing that kind of you could bring to the table that they weren't doing?
Yeah, I because I'd gone through this like 2.5 years of sort of falling a little bit out of love with the industry. I was looking at other things and I was very interested in marketing. I always had been, we had £1 million marketing budget and I was able to kind of see KPIs. I was able to see ROIs. I could see um, trends. I could see what worked and what didn't work. And I love an Excel sheet and I'm quite analytical and I like kind of watching what happens when X does Y. Um, so I was looking at other things and just working out outside of industry trainers, outside of industry conferences and things like that. What is the rest of the world doing that estate agents aren't doing? And I quickly realized that we were really archaic in the world of marketing at that point. Um, this is pre-COVID, obviously, at the time. And I was kind of just really interested to hear from marketing experts outside of a state agency, business owners outside of a state agency. And it quickly made me realize that there was a place for a very different, more modern way of doing marketing that was really a missed opportunity in agency. There wasn't very many agents that were working the way that the rest of the world had evolved to. When I started agency, there wasn't even an iPhone. And then we moved from applicant boxes to CRMs. And then we moved from putting, properties in the paper to just advertising on Rightmove and Zoopla. And then we moved to nurture journeys and a bit of email campaigns. But realistically, most stuff stayed the same. Virtual tours came out and Giraffe had 360s and stuff like that. But there wasn't much over a 16-year period of drastic change in agency, but the rest of the world had totally turned upside down in how it was doing marketing. Um, so that was the opportunity. The gap was from a client's point of view was communication. That was the big sort of realization is, that's the number one complaint with the ombudsman and with PRS every single year has been for double decades. With estate agents, we have one job is to communicate, and that's what we get wrong every single year is the number one complaint. So that was what needed fixing. That was the gap between good and average, or very good and poor. And the opportunity was marketing. So they were the two things that I really kind of drilled down on: communication and marketing.
So as a business and yourself is included in that, obviously you are heavily into the content creation side of things. You've got podcasts, you've got YouTube, you've got the book, all this sort of area. Is there any particular moment where you thought to yourself, this is working? Because you obviously when you first do these things, you kind of give it a go. I'll give YouTube a go and I'll give a podcast a go and I'll try and write a book, wherever it may be. Is there any kind of particular moment that kind of happened where you're like, I think I might be onto something here?
Yeah, there is one moment, and I always remember it very vividly. So we soft launched Avocado on the 18th of March, which was 6 days before lockdown. So that was fun. Um, we just decided we knew it was coming, we knew something was happening, but we were like, do you know what? We're geared up to launch. If the country's getting shut down in some version or another, we still have to go ahead with this because we've put all of our savings into it and we need to make it work. And we're okay for like 14 months if we don't bank a penny. So 6 days before lockdown, we launched, and then 6 days later, lockdown happened. And in that period of time, a lot of estate agents were put on furlough. And we just went, well, all we can do really is social media now. All we can do is talk to the public. We can run ads, but we can just do content. Sat in this room where I am now, my home office, where everyone else was kind of not necessarily enjoying lockdown, they were panicking in the early stages, but we were just being a voice. We were just being honest, wearing the pink hoodie that you mentioned on the intro. And I remember about 4 weeks into doing that, hadn't listed a property, weren't allowed to list a property. was in Sainsbury's in Bracknell, which is the marketplace where I kind of kicked off Bracknell and Wokenham. And I lived in one of the villages just down the road. Gone into Sainsbury's. Obviously, you've got all of the aisles kind of distance. You've got people behind you, and you kind of it's all a bit spaced out. And I had the hoodie on, and someone that had just bought their shopping, and I was putting mine on, clocked me and said, I've seen your videos. I love what you're doing. I love that you're trying to break the mold. I love the pink hoodie. I love avocado as a name. And you know what? A state agency needs something like that. So keep what you're doing, and I hope it works well. And then someone 2 lanes down heard the conversation and said, I've seen your videos as well, and I like what you're doing. And then the lady that was serving me that was on the till, she's like, avocado, yeah, I've seen that. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. We've not even listed a house. It's 4 weeks into the soft launch of the business. And I've got 5 people in Sainsbury's in the middle of lockdown, all had noticed us. And it was at that moment I was like, okay, panic over. Because I'm not being funny, Chris. We shit ourselves a little bit launching that different. At the initial outset, it was kind of, we're going to press the button on this and we're going to go with pink hoodies, not navy suits and brown shoes. It was a bit scary from our point of view. So we didn't know if it would work. But that was the moment where I called up Mike and I was like, you won't believe what just happened in Sainsbury's. And we were like, well, stick with it. It's going to work. And we were confident from that point onwards, really.
So what made you go with the pink and the brand in total? Was it kind of like you want to be as loud as possible? Because you could have, the easier option for you would have been go down sort of the normal route, inverted commas, and it would have been sort of the suity or the polo shirty or whatever it may be. What made you go for sort of the bright, the hoodie, the loud, the avocado even itself sort of thing? What made you get on that route on the sort of the marketing angle?
Yeah, avocado I touch on in a sec. The brand, the pink, the colors, the fonts, the website, the messaging, everything was based around our marketing avatar. Everything was based around families. So we didn't want to market to the whole of the marketplace. We didn't want 100% of the market. We never want to be market leaders. We want a very small slice of market share. We don't measure market share at all. We've got zero interest in it. Everything that we do is around profit and being a profitable business that cash flows and talking to our marketing avatar. And our marketing avatar was us. It was middle-aged families that live in 3 and 4 bedroom houses that are likely to look to upsize, that are going on the school journey of 2 and 3 year olds pushing for primary school locations, or 8, 9, 10 year olds that are looking at secondary school locations, or even on the flip side of that, the top end of our marketing avatar were people that had kids coming back from uni that were now moving out to go, and they were thinking of potentially downsizing. That was the window that we were kind of sat within. So we realized that in the main, that moving decision, that pulse comes from the wife, typically speaking, is the wife that makes that decision to start the move. So we had an appeal to family mums and dads, but as a primary, we were calling and talking out to mums that were going to relate to what we were trying to say. So the brand was built around that avatar, effectively, was built around attracting that. So that's why we've got things like the magic of moving home. The magic of moving home as a kind of as a statement on the website is connecting with like the Disney magic, and opening the door on completion day for the 2 kids to run upstairs and pick their bedroom is like a wow factor moment, or to see that the garden is 4 times the size as their last garden. They're celebrating together, like the kids running around thinking, wow, this is my, that's the magic of moving home. That was missed in agency. And that's what we wanted to bring. And that's what the brand was about. Avocado as a name came because we wanted strangely, we wanted A as a letter. We felt there was something in the letter A. And just strategically, we also knew that if we were going to be not trying to get market share, we know that Rightmove do listings of agents on alphabetical. So we were like, if anything, we'll just be top of the list on every single town that we operate in. That's a little strategic move. But the A was the Amazon and, that Apple and that kind of vibe. We wanted to be in that sort of flavor. And the name came from me just wearing a pair of swimming shorts that I got on my honeymoon that had avocados all over them. And I just said to my wife, what about avocado properties? And then I said it to my hairdresser. And then I said it to a couple of other people. And every time they sort of almost tongue in cheek smiled. And it was just evolved from that to Avocado Property from there, basically. But the brand and the messaging and the colors and the font and that aspect of it was very much driven by that marketing avatar.
And how important do you think it is to have that marketing avenue and have that sort of not only geographic niche, but also a demographic niche as well? Because I talk to a lot of estate agents, and they're kind of like, anyone with a front door on a pulse, I'll take it on the market sort of thing. And, you're within a 10-mile radius of Surrey, you're the right person for me sort of thing. So how important do you reckon it is to have that sort of really clear vision about who you're trying to work with?
Yeah, well, I think it's vital, and I think it's a big part of the problem that I experienced in agency for myself personally. If I think about my career, when I was at the traditional agency, we were marketing for properties. We wanted certain types of properties on the market. We wanted certain more properties in certain streets. So we were always talking about 4 beds and 3 bed terraces, so we're never talking about people. But the property doesn't make the decision. Property doesn't pick the agent. The person that owns the property makes the decision, which is totally missed. And I think still now, with direct mail campaigns that agents run and things like that, they're still looking for the property. I've got buyers for your house. What about what their goal is? They're not selling the house because they want to sell the house. They're selling the house because they want to buy a new property and they need to sell the house to finance the goal. And we just totally miss the point that people move home because they want to move to another property or another location, not because they want to sell their house. So for me, the marketing avatar was the way that we stopped trying to talk to everyone. We start talking to someone. And our kind of slogan that was on the bottom of our email for the first 2 years was people before property, because it was all about connecting with people, and then the properties come. But you do business with a person, you don't do business with a house. So having an avatar ultimately was vital for what we were trying to do and how we were trying to be different.
I love that. So you talk a lot on the Avocado website about being omnipresent and sort of omnipresent marketing effectively. So being everywhere effectively. So how do you apply that across all platforms? So, do you just try and literally have every avenue as much as you possibly can do? Whether you want to read a book, we've got a book, podcast, we've got a podcast. How do you sort of make sure that works across the platforms where that avatar might be looking?
Yeah, I mean, without going like too crazy detailed into digital marketing, effectively, if we've got good content, it can be kind of posted cross-channel. So if I do a marketing update as an example, a national marketing update, then I can use that across multi-channels. But at the same time, what we're aware of is different channels, different algorithms work in slightly different ways. So we might have a different call out or a different caption headline for the video on different channels. Um, for me as an individual, I talk to estate agents on LinkedIn. I talk to the public on Instagram and Facebook. So depending on what I'm doing, depends on how I set that up. So if it was my marketing update and I wanted to show estate agents how I do a marketing update to build trust and familiarity with the estate agency industry to hopefully attract more avocado partners, it's a very different message that I put on LinkedIn to what I put on Facebook. But the content is actually the same. The hard part is the same. It just takes me an extra 30 seconds to write a different set of text and a different call to action at the bottom. Um, Also, in terms of from a digital marketing point of view, the great thing about doing digital marketing is you've got two targets really. You're either trying to build traffic to a conversion page on your website, or you're trying to build an awareness audience that you can then use to retarget. So in simplicity, there's two goals with any pieces of content. Is I'm either trying to build a retarget audience and build familiarity and that let the trust timer tick with them so that they get to know us, and when they're ready, they'll then move to the next phase, or I retarget them with a traffic and just offer the opportunity. Now they're familiar, so they're no longer cold, they're now warm, and then take them to the website to try and convert on the page into data and then use the CRM to convert them into clients. So depending on what we're doing, depends on how it works. But the omnipresence comes from the fact that once they're in the retarget audience, or once they've landed on the website and they're in the pixel, or they're local and they see me doing the school run or in the same shop that they're in, same with the partners, obviously. The omnipresence is just the fact that you connect the dots. Once your cookie is there, effectively, I've got you. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we actually are everywhere, but we are everywhere in the eyes of the client that we ideally want to talk to, basically.
So, what a question for you. So, yeah, I can be quite blunt with this, so because you've sworn already in the podcast. I have to do the explicit content button already, so I can swear twice. That's no problem at all. So, you really know your shit when it comes to marketing. Do you think you're a better marketer or a better estate agent?
I think I've got more experience in a state agency. So to answer that question, as in the estate agency industry, I'm a better marketer than an estate agent. In the world, I'm a better estate agent than a marketer. So in estate agency, I'm a black belt in marketing. In the world of marketing, I'm a yellow belt in marketing. And that shows the entry barrier or the quality of proper marketing in the state agency. It shows how far away we are from being good when we compare ourselves to the planet, basically.
All
Does
right.
that make sense?
That makes absolutely perfect sense. And people ask me quite a few times, what kind of podcasts do you listen to in the estate agency world, or books do you read in the estate agency world? Apart from my own, obviously. I would say none really. Because do I think the guys at Silicon Valley are looking at a state agency thinking, God, if we could just keep up with the state agency and their marketing, we'd be all right, sort of thing? No, far from it. There's many, many areas throughout the world that are absolutely light years ahead of a state agency. So actually looking outside of sort of the shallow pool that is a state agency and going, actually, we're not doing that. We can nick that. And they're 2 years ahead of us on that. Let's nick that. I mean, that's really where I spend most of my time and get most of my information from is stuff outside the estate agency world and pulling into it. So yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense and sort of rings a lot of bells with myself and what I look at as well.
Yeah. I think I like to kind of use the Ryan Reynolds story as like a really good way for estate agents to realize how important social media, video content, and in particular personal brand is. And you look at someone like Ryan Reynolds that's now a billionaire, not because he was a great actor, but because he had a personal brand. He was quite cheeky in what he did. And then he you basically leveraged his personal brand to get equity stakes in big companies and then used himself as the marketing face to turn those companies into superpower companies and sold them and kept them. And you look at the football club and stuff like that. It's just such a great case study of how you can use personal brand at the top end to leverage everything. And then you look at things like the Prime frenzy that happened with the Prime bottle. I mean, it tastes like piss, right? It's not actually the best hydration drink out there. I'm into ultra running, so I know it's pretty average, but because it was YouTube influencers that created it, it sent the world into frenzy, and people were paying £5 for a cup of the drink. Like it was mental. That's personal brand and social media. They didn't get the Prime value or equity because they were doing a load of direct mails saying check out this bottle, or going around knocking on doors for people that were drinking Lucasade. They did it because they had a personal brand and a social media footprint that allowed them to do that. That is the way the world is moving, is the personal brand element of things. Really, that's where the firepower is now.
And you're an individual who is very clued up from what I can see from a distance with regard to, Facebook ads, and you mentioned things like pixels and landing pages and all those sort of bits and pieces that are very sort of I won't say funnel focused, but it is that sort of direction. How long did it take you to kind of go from being a complete novice of that sort of stuff to the point where you're like, yeah, I kind of know my stuff. I know enough that I know that I'm not the best in the world, but I know enough that I'm better than most people.
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny part of it is, and people that knew me before Avocado knew that I was quite anti social media. I was never on Facebook. I was never on Instagram as Ian Macbeth. I was on Twitter for like football updates, but outside of that, I hadn't been on Facebook ever in my life until I realized that I needed to understand it for Avocado. So, like 9 months before we launched, I created a Facebook profile for the first time ever in 2019. Um, so to answer that question, the good thing for me is I saw Facebook and Instagram as a business tool, not a way for me to connect with people that I went to school with 20 years ago. It was more, I'm going to use this as a tool because I know it works. So because I knew it worked, but I didn't know how to work it, it was just a case of deep diving and learning it. I'd say I don't know. I mean, it changes like every in 6 months' time. If I didn't do any ads or any pixel related stuff, I'd be a novice to the algorithm and how it works because it changes that quickly. But I reckon within a year, I was pretty comfortable that I understood what was going on. I knew that what ads I'd spent money on that didn't work. I knew that we had a problem with our conversion page on the website and that needed changing. And then even last week, I asked Alex at Estate Apps to tweak something on the valuation booking page because I thought it would make a 40% difference on people landing in it and converting into a lead. So probably a year on the Facebook aspect of things, probably 2 years on more understanding website conversions and that aspect of things. And I'm still learning all the time. I've got tomorrow and the next day, 2 days in Birmingham in a mastermind that is very much around just marketing, totally outside of a state agency, high level people in there. And that's the sort of education that I'm going on now is learning from those types of people, really.
And let's say, for example, I came to you and I want to become an avocado partner, but I said to you, "Oh, I'm not really a fan of this social media malarkey. I don't really know how it works. I haven't logged into my Facebook account for the last 5 years or so." Is it a prerequisite that if you join Avocado, you are going to be the face of the business? You better get used to being in front of a camera and podcasts and whatever else it may be. And how do you ensure that the high levels that you have on your social media filter down to people when they join the business?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of standards on the brand, we have a license agreement. So certain brand standards have to be adhered to. You can't change the font, you can't change the color, you can't change the logo. We're strong as a group by being familiar to the public. I think we are one of the only self-employed brands that really from headquarters, from the brand HQ, talk to the public, not to just try and recruit estate agents. We talk to the public. I think we're known very well in the public's eyes through the work that we do by talking to the public. So I think that helps the agents, which is why we're strong on keeping the brand guidelines. I mean, we give them like a 7 gig brand pack. It's got a full 20-page style guide on how to use a font and how to use the logo. So it's like it's almost idiot proof, but we go through it with them. In terms of like the video, and to answer your question, if you were that individual that came to me and said, I haven't logged into my Facebook for 5 years, I don't really understand social media, I don't really get it, I would then ask the question of, do you want to know it? Do you understand why it's important, or is that not really your style? And that answer dictates whether we continue the conversation or not. Because if you turn around and say, it's not for me, I'm old school agency, that's not what I'm going to be doing, I'm not going to get on camera, I would say go and join another self-employed model. It's not for avocado. So I for 4 people that I meet with, I say yes to one. One, it's not right for financially, and two, I say no to. Um, and that's a big part of it is you have to buy into the concept. You don't have to understand it. I will teach it, but you have to know it works. And once we know it works and we're aligned with that, I'll teach what you need to know after that. But you have to want to learn it. You can't be against it. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, you're kind of ringing bells here 'cause I got back from I think it's officially known as the boys' weekend in Barcelona this weekend, and none of the guys there post on social media in any way, shape, or form, and obviously I post on social media a lot, so quite an ongoing joke with regard to you can put us on LinkedIn and whatever else it might be throughout the weekend. And I spoke to one of the guys and I said, look, in reality, if you could do your job you're doing today, and I paid you an extra £100,000, would you post on LinkedIn every day? And it was like, well, yeah. And I was like, well, there you go. That is basically what you're doing by not increasing that social brand and actually not doing the stuff that others won't do. You're holding yourself back, and actually, you're the mug because actually your family is now missing out on that £100,000 because you won't post on social media every day. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's very much ringing bells with myself.
Yeah. It's posting on social media and understanding what to post, what the message is, and who it's for. It goes back to that avatar. If you're posting on LinkedIn, you with a massive carp, and you're kind of like, check out the big fish that I caught this weekend. People will be like, yeah, all right, Chris. Like the fishermen out there will be like, I respect that, lovely ghost carp or whatever it may be. But the estate agents out there that you potentially want to talk to, they won't get it. If you use it as a way of kind of talking about the importance of not getting burnout in a state agency and having this relaxing moment, and I go fishing because I love the social dynamic of being with like-minded friends, and it gives me ability to relax so that on Monday when I talk to my clients, I'm back up fully recharged. Estate agents will connect with that because of how the messaging is different. So that's part of where I think social media has changed in the time that I've been understanding it. It was volume, 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 just chuck stuff out there, it will do it. Then the algorithm wants value, value, value. And now it's volume and value. Like it has to be good and you have to do it at volume. And that's probably where people I get the idea that in a state agency we're a little bit too impatient, not just a state agency, a lot of industries, a bit too impatient to stick to the consistency of offering something that's valuable to people.
I love that. So talk me through some of the success stories that you've had with Avocado. So the guys that really sort of hit the ground running, do really well, and they're sort of your top 20% or whatever it may be. What are some of the key characteristics that those guys have that maybe other agents haven't got?
Yeah, I think there's probably two different types of people that join Avocado, that they're aligned with the fact that they got frustrated with a state agency. They got frustrated with something to do with where they were in the industry. It's either something to do with time, finances, or control and being heard. You know, I think most of the avocado partners that I bring on are like 10 years into their industry career as a sort of minimum. We don't bring like neg level on or 2 years. It's you have to have done 100 valuations for me to start your own business in a state agency. You have to have been in the living room and understand that part of it. So for me, it's like 8, 9, 10 years worth of industry career. So the people that we bring have got frustrated. They've got almost to the ceiling limit of being like branch manager level, and they don't really feel like the title is what it says on the tin, because ultimately the owner is still dictating their decisions. All they're doing is just being a fireman to the staff and being a valuer that has to convert. So it's kind of like a split role that they don't enjoy. And a lot of them actually just love being an estate agent and don't want to be managers. They don't want management style responsibilities. They don't want to be sat in the boardroom. They just love being with people. Where we find the success comes from is they totally buy into the blueprint of what avocado is, the brand, the concept, the building the community, being part of the community, living and breathing kind of your marketplace. They totally buy into that. But also they're just really positive people. They're just, you know, that there's what I call solution finders, not problem searchers. I've got a ruder way of saying that. In fact, we saw on this, they're not a shit magnet, they're a money maker. That's the difference of how we look at it. You know, the two people, you can split the personality, winners, losers, negative, positive, however you want to phrase it up. We go with the left group of people, not the right group of people. And that seems to have worked for us. But we've learned that we've made mistakes along the way. It's not been perfect the whole way, you know, with the people we brought into the brand. We've cancelled 5 licenses since we launched because we made a mistake on them being not right for us. So we're happy to accept when we make a mistake, and quality is what we're all about, not quantity. We could be 7 times, 8 times the size we are now in terms of numbers, but that isn't the goal. It is about trying to impact the industry positively for the client and for the agent, really.
And what are some of the key mindsets that agents need to succeed? Because obviously, you are a ultra marathon runner, as it mentions on your LinkedIn bio. So obviously you are a committed guy. You know, how you run for that period of time without giving up and quitting and throwing the towel and whatever else it might be, I've absolutely no idea. So is it about having that laser focus? You know, is it having, commitment? Is it being consistent? What's the sort of mindset people should have from day one where they go, actually, I'm going to make this work?
Probably come most good businesses are built from frustration, I think. So whatever that fire is in their belly that's frustrated them is harnessing that and finding out what that is and then giving them the answers. So it's normally they want control of their diary. So they ultimately just want their diary back, or they want to earn way more money than they've ever earned. So the mindset is built on this is the frustration, this is the goal, and let's build the plan of what works for you. I did a business development chat with one of the partners yesterday for 2025, and he's 18 months in, his business is in a good place. And it was right. Well, what do you want to get out of 2025? Well, I want to earn 170 grand's worth of commission, which brings me 120. And I want to spend a little bit more time with my kids. And I was like, great. So we then looked at it and we said £171,000 divided by a 40-hour week with 6 weeks less. I think it was a 1,860 hours. That meant that his working hour was worth £81.50 to him. So the way that we bought back his time and still committed to the quality in his case was to say, right, your goals are now based on if this is not an £81 an hour job, you need to outsource that. So if it's social media scheduling, outsource it. If it's video editing, outsource it. If it's interacting with a client on evaluation, that's a £200 an hour job. You must do that job. So it's hard to answer that question because it's so different depending on whether someone's got kids, haven't got kids, young kids, older kids, what financial situation and frustration they're in. They maybe they've sold their house, they've got all the money in the world, they're not fussed about making it through. Someone might be like, if I don't bank in month six, so it's depending on what the goal is. I mean, the best of the best that we've got are duos. We're more about the duos. We've got some fantastic solo people as well, but the real big hitting financial people are duos. They've got one limited business, two shareholders at 50-50. They're great estate agents and they work in a yin and yang style, which is a little bit similar to me and Mike, my business partner. Their strengths are their weaknesses and vice versa. And I think in self-employed agency, that is what I would advise people do is if you can do it in partnership, then you will be stronger as a two than you will as a one, typically speaking.
Yeah, I used to find that a lot, and yeah, you're absolutely right. The ones that I experienced were the best ones, were the ones where one would be quite analytical and kind of the behind the scenes guy. The other one would kind of be the showman out the front, so your typical salesman, and sort of vice versa sort of thing. So they never were kind of two characteristics and personalities that were exactly the same. They're usually very different, but also different, values to the table. And they're the ones that absolutely, thrive from day one.
And I think to answer your question on the mindset, it's not necessarily something that I think can be taught, but they care. They really care and they care about their own reputation. They really care about their clients and they care about their goals. And I think that word care is probably the thing that in the mindset, I don't know whether it can be taught, but it's something that I find that's the theme that goes through the successful ones is they really, really care. Like they'll really beat themselves up if something's not right by them or um by the client. If something's not right in the CRM, they don't contact me and say, this is really annoying me. And it's, I think the group are going to be suffering because of this. How do we get it to do this so it's better for all of us? Um, Same on the website, same on the messaging, same in a process. It's often that they care about the group rather than themselves. So it's like a selfless sort of care and attention. And I think in self-employed agency, that's probably something which is very different to what a corporate or traditional um, value probably sits as well, I would say.
I think lots of studies have shown that sort of the more you give away without the expectation to receive back, the better you do in life and money and happiness and all those sort of bits and pieces. So I think that sort of mindset of just give, give, give with no sort of plan to get paid back necessarily is a really gold way to go down.
Yeah, and you can do that on social media so easily now. I feel that sometimes estate agents they undervalue the skill they've got because it's not like we've gone to university to become an estate agent. We aren't a profession, but don't forget like the value that we offer. I mean, I teach in schools. I go and teach like 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds in sixth form about credit ratings and mortgages and how to buy your first property and the difference of renting from 25 to 85 and kind of really kind of break it down. But we offer so much value as estate agents. If any of your friends in your network or the guys that you go fishing with are thinking about moving, you're the first person they're going to contact and they're going to ask for your advice for free and your knowledge for free because they know what industry you're in. They're going to ask you how the market is. And we've got a lot of skill and a lot of value in property. We've got two apprentices in our marketing team. And one of the first things I said to them is within the first year, you're going to understand so much about property that's an unbelievable life lesson that the apprenticeship in marketing will be great. But what you're going to learn in the year about mortgages and how the property industry works will way surpass that for your life skill. You're going to fast track your friends by 5 or 6 years on buying your first home because of the confidence and knowledge you're going to get from a state agency. And that if we share it with the world, we can build some really good trust with people. But if we just keep it locked up for evaluation, it's almost too late at that point. You're in a sales environment, not in a sharing and giving environment, like you said.
So you mentioned the future there. So let's talk about the future. So how do you see the role of estate agents and estate agency in general? How do you see that evolving over the next couple of years or so? And then second question off the back of that is how do agents stay ahead of the curve on that side rather than getting left behind?
It's hard, isn't it? It's so difficult. It's the question of what comes next. I was at the Iceberg EAX9 the other day conference, and Daniel Priestley was on stage with Mark Burgess, and he kind of asked a similar question. And Daniel Priestley said, "Well, in a year's time, AI will be able to do all of this blah 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 stuff," and all the estate agents in the room are like, "Oh God, that's like what we do." But it's embracing the technology, it's understanding the trends. How to answer your first question, where will a state agency be in 5 years? None of us know, but it will be very much for me the corporate style, the chop chop go go volume stuff, and the bespoke stuff. And I think the chasm, the gap will increase. At the moment, if we looked 10 years ago, you got online, you got a bit of purple bricks, you got a bit of this, you got some traditional, you got independents, you got some corporates, and it's kind of there was quite a nice theme. I think that gap is growing. Corporates are buying the traditionals. I think a lot of the one, two, three branch agency owners are hitting late 50s, 60s, are looking to sell up, looking to get out of the industry. And I think they're getting bought by corporate. So the corporate animals, the big four, five, six are growing. Obviously, we've seen the rise of self-employed. We've seen the crumble of the online because it was never going to work. That it didn't have the ability to give the client what they needed. It was just cheaper, and that doesn't help. That just makes it worse in reality. So that's removing from the equation as a significant force. And then you've got the bespoke. You've got the local agency on the high street that's a celebrity within their town, that's super involved in the community. They've got a great lettings book. They've got great staff that have been with them for a long time. They don't often recruit new people. They don't often see people leave. That traditional independent sat there will be that villager's kind of superpower. And then there'll be a self-employed one that works but doesn't want market share like they want, that just wants to make profit and have a lifestyle business. And I think that chasm will just grow bigger and bigger, and the gap will become more distant between the two, basically. And very much in the world of, if people want to book a holiday, some people go on Expedia and get the cheapest holiday they can for what looks like the best without talking to anyone, and they're more than comfortable doing that. Whereas some people will go to a travel agent because they couldn't think of anything worse than booking, a couple of grand on a couple of photos, and they need to speak to someone and get someone's opinion because they need that knowledge, and they need that feel of, okay, that person knows more than me, and confidence to then go and pay, and they'll pay more for that. And I think it will be the same with agencies. There'll be these two different sides basically, and I think that will be the big difference of what it was 10 years ago. Maybe we're seeing the turn of that. Lockdowns forced it, and that maybe is the way that it goes over the next couple of years, I think. I
Ian,
can't
thank
remember
you.
your second question.
No, 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 I think you more than answered it. So thank you so much for coming on today. You've been an absolutely amazing guest to have on, and you must be doing the right stuff because I speak to a lot of either currently self-employed estate agents or people who are looking to go self-employed estate agents, and your name and Avocado comes up all the time. So you're obviously doing some really good stuff. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.